Her daughter was only 12 years old when a 22-year-old man molested her. Taking matters into her own hands, Danielle Harris drove to his residence and did something that no one could have anticipated. Here are 10 parents who took justice into their own hands against child molesters. Jason Browning. On July 18, 2014, in Daytona Beach, Florida, a father named Jason Browning made a desperate call to 911. His voice trembled with rage as he reported catching Raymond Frolander, an 18-year-old close to the family, molesting his young son.
911, where's the emergency?
My emergency is I just walked in and found a grown man molesting, and I got him in a bloody puddle for you right now, officer.
Okay, sir, you're at it.
Browning didn't wait for the authorities. He took justice into his own hands, beating Frolander unconscious with nothing but his fists and feet. When the dispatcher asked if he'd used any weapons, Browning's response was raw and direct.
My fist and my foot.
The nightmare began when Browning returned home to an unsettling scene. Frolander was in the apartment while Browning had been out, a presence that wasn't unusual given their familiarity. But as Browning stepped inside, he saw Frolander's pants drop to his ankles, a sight that confirmed his worst fears in an instant. Witnessing this scene with his very own eyes, there was no room for hesitation. No words were needed for the father as he snapped. Browning, in a fit of rage, unleashed a barrage of blows that left Frolander battered and bruised on the floor. Photos of Frolander's bruised, swollen face soon hit the news, becoming a grim snapshot of a father's wrath when it comes to protecting his children. In the heat of the moment, Browning's anger pushed him even further beyond. During the 911 call, he confessed that he had wanted to end Frolander's life. To that end, Browning even grabbed a butcher knife from the kitchen, fully intent on making sure that the molester could never hurt anyone again. But as he stood over Frolander, his son intervened. With a shake of his head, the boy silently begged his father to stop, pulling Browning back from the edge. The knife hit the floor, and Frolander's life was spared, though his punishment was far from over. On April 2, 2015, Frolander faced the consequences in court. Accepting a plea deal, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison, dodging a mandatory life term. Beyond that, he was ordered to register as a sex offender for life and wear a GPS monitor upon release. Meanwhile, Browning walked away with no charges. Daytona Beach Police Chief Michael Chitwood stood by the father's actions, declaring that the father acted as a father should act. This case lays bare the fierce instincts of a parent protecting their child, and the legal system's rare nod to such vigilante justice in the face of unspeakable betrayal. Gary Plauché. On March 16, 1984, a father's anguish culminated in a shocking act of vengeance broadcasted on live television. Gary Plauché, a resident of Baton Rouge, Louisiana, shot and killed Jeffrey Doucet, a karate instructor who had kidnapped and sexually assaulted Plauché's 11-year-old son, Jody. Jeffrey Doucet had been Jody's karate instructor and had gained the trust of the Plauché family. However, unbeknownst to them, Doucet had been sexually abusing Jody for at least a year. In February 1984, Doucet kidnapped Jody and took him to a motel in Anaheim, California, where the abuse continued. The nationwide search for Jody ended when Doucet allowed him to place a collect call to his mother, leading authorities to their location. Doucet was arrested, and Jody was safely returned to his family. Upon learning of the abuse and kidnapping, Gary Plauché was consumed with anger and grief. When he discovered that Doucet was being extradited back to Louisiana to face trial, Plauché decided to confront him. On the evening of March 16th, as Doucet was escorted through the Baton Rouge airport in handcuffs, Plauché waited by a bank of payphones, pretending to be on a call. As Doucet walked past, Plauché drew a handgun and shot him in the head at point-blank range, an act captured by news cameras covering Doucet's arrival. Doucet was pronounced dead the following day. Plauché was immediately arrested and charged with second-degree murder. However, public sentiment was largely in his favor, with many viewing his actions as those of a protective father avenging his son's abuse. This perspective influenced the judicial proceedings. Plauché eventually pleaded no contest to a reduced charge of manslaughter and received a 7-year suspended sentence, 5 years of probation, and 300 hours of community service, effectively serving no prison time. Danielle Harris. In March 2020, Decatur, Georgia, became the backdrop for a tragic sequence of events stemming from a mother's desperate attempt to seek justice for her daughter. Danielle Harris, upon discovering a disturbing video involving her 12-year-old daughter and a 22-year-old man, faced a situation no parent ever anticipates. The ordeal began on March 31st, 2020, when Harris came across footage showing her young daughter engaged in a sexual act with Antonio Harley. Distressed and outraged, Harris reported the incident to the DeKalb County Police Department in the early hours of April 1st. An officer documented her report, assured her that detectives would follow up, and cautioned her against seeking personal retribution. Despite this warning, Harris's anguish propelled her toward a perilous path. Later that day, Harris assembled a group and drove to an apartment complex near Wesley Chapel and Snapfinger Roads to confront Harley. Armed with handguns, Harris and 3 others approached Harley's residence. Upon arrival, Harris instructed her daughter to identify Harley's apartment. Harley, noticing the group's presence, attempted to evade them by retreating into his apartment. As he secured the door behind him, someone from Harris's group fired a shot, striking Harley in the chest. In response, Harley's brother, aiming to protect himself and 5 younger siblings inside, returned fire. During this chaotic exchange, 19-year-old Juan Newkirk, a member of Harris's group, was fatally wounded. The aftermath was devastating. Harris was arrested and subsequently charged with felony murder, conspiracy to commit aggravated assault, and possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony. In March 2024, she was convicted on all counts and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole, plus an additional 5 years. Meanwhile, Harley survived his injuries and faced charges including statutory rape, child molestation, and sexual exploitation of children. His case remains pending. The Texas Ranch Father. On June 9, 2012, in Shiner, Texas, a father made a frantic call to 911, his voice thick with fury and desperation. He had just caught Jesus Mora Flores, a 47-year-old ranch hand, molesting his 5-year-old daughter in the barn during a family barbecue. He didn't wait for help. He charged at Flores, ripping him off his child and pummeling him with his fists. "I beat him until he stopped moving," he told the dispatcher, breathless and unapologetic. The nightmare unfolded when the father heard his daughter's screams pierce through the chatter of the barbecue. Racing to the barn, he saw Flores in the act, a sight that shattered his world. There was no hesitation. His fists flew, delivering blow after blow to Flores's head and neck. By the time he stepped back, Flores lay dead on the dirt floor, his body a testament to a father's raw protective instinct. Deputies arrived to a chaotic scene, the father cradling his trembling daughter. Under Texas law, deadly force is permissible to stop a sexual assault, and a grand jury reviewed the case. On June 19, 2012, they declined to indict the father, deeming his actions justified. After all, witnesses reported Flores forcefully carrying the girl to the barn. The decision sparked debate. Some hailed him as a hero, others questioned the lethal force. In Shiner, though, the community saw a father who acted as any parent might, standing firm in the face of unimaginable betrayal. Ellie Nestler. On April 2, 1993, in Jamestown, California, Ellie Nestler sat in a tense courtroom, staring down Daniel Driver, the 35-year-old accused of molesting her 6-year-old son, William, and 4 other boys. As Driver smirked during the trial, Nestler's grief turned to rage. She pulled a pistol from her purse and fired 5 shots into his head and neck, killing him instantly as the courtroom erupted in shock. The horror began when William tearfully confessed to his mother about the abuse at a summer camp. Driver's prior convictions fueled Nestler's fear of a lenient sentence. On that fateful day, she smuggled the gun past security, driven by a mother's anguish. "He wasn't going to hurt anyone else," she later said, her voice steady with resolve. Arrested immediately, Nestler faced a divided public. Some saw a grieving mother, others a vigilante. Her 1994 trial ended with a voluntary manslaughter conviction and a 10-year sentence, though health issues led to her release after 3 years. Driver's death closed a dark chapter, but Nestler's act ignited fierce debates about justice, leaving a haunting legacy in California's legal history. The Buenos Aires parents. On November 6, 2016, in Buenos Aires, Argentina, a cathedral concert turned violent when a group of parents recognized Marcelo Fabian Piccolo, a 42-year-old convicted pedophile, playing trumpet on stage. Released after serving only 4 years of a 30-year sentence for molesting 5 children, his presence enraged them. Shouting, "With the children, no!" they stormed the stage, beating him with his own instrument as he scrambled to escape. The ordeal started when the parents identified Piccolo from news reports about his early release. "There's a pedophile in the church," they yelled, their voices cutting through the music. The attack was swift and brutal, a release of years of frustration with a lenient system. Piccolo survived, hospitalized with severe injuries, and later died in 2019 of unrelated causes. The parents were arrested but released amid widespread public support. Their actions sparked protests against Argentina's justice system, highlighting deep-seated anger over child protection failures. The beating became a stark symbol of parental fury when trust in the law collapses. Drąsius Kaitis. On October 5, 2009, in Kaunas, Lithuania, Drąsius Kaitis, 37, took drastic action after accusing several men of molesting his 4-year-old daughter, Deimantė. Convinced the police ignored his pleas, he tracked down 2 suspects, Judge Jonas Furmanavičius and Violeta Naruševičienė, and allegedly shot them dead, then fled, leaving a nation reeling. The terror surfaced when Deimantė described abuse by uncles during visits with her mother. Kaitis reported it, but felt dismissed. Desperate, he turned to violence, targeting those he held responsible. "I had no choice," he claimed in a video later released, his voice heavy with torment. His disappearance triggered a manhunt and protests over child safety laws. Kaitis was found dead in 2010 under mysterious circumstances, his mission unfinished. Lithuania split. Some saw a father at his breaking point, others a reckless killer. Jay Maynor. On June 8, 2014, in Cullman, Alabama, a father named Jay Maynor confronted a haunting reality that had shadowed his family for over a decade. His daughter, Julia, had been sexually abused at the tender age of 4 by her adoptive grandfather, Raymond Earl Brooks. Brooks had pleaded guilty to the abuse in 2002 and was sentenced to 5 years in prison, but served only 27 months. The weight of his daughter's trauma became unbearable for Maynor. Fueled by a father's anguish and a sense of justice denied, he armed himself and set out to confront Brooks. Locating him, Maynor shot and killed the man who had stolen his daughter's innocence. In November 2016, Maynor pleaded guilty to the murder, a decision made, in part, to spare his daughter from reliving her ordeal in court. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison. Julia, standing by her father, described him as an amazing father who acted out of profound love and protection. The case sparked public debate, with many sympathizing with Maynor's actions. A petition advocating for his release garnered thousands of signatures, reflecting a collective empathy for a father's desperate act to defend his child. Eduardo Gallo. In July 2000, in Tepoztlan, Mexico, a father named Eduardo Gallo faced a devastating crisis. His 25-year-old daughter, Paula, was kidnapped from their weekend home by armed men who stormed the property. They terrorized Paula and her friends for hours before fleeing with her and 2 stolen cars. Gallo's voice carried the weight of desperation as he received a ransom demand, prompting him to scrape together $18,500 and jewelry to secure her release. But a week later, his worst fears were confirmed when Paula's body was found, shot in the neck and back, her life taken despite the payment. The horror unfolded as the police investigation fell apart. Fingerprints went uncollected, Paula's clothes vanished before forensic testing, and stolen items from the house later turned up in a police storeroom, hinting at corruption or incompetence. Gallo didn't wait for the authorities to act. He shut down his consulting firm and took justice into his own hands, disguising himself as a second-hand clothes salesman to hunt for clues in nearby villages. His persistence led him to a payphone the gunman had used to coordinate with the gang, a vital piece of evidence he turned over to the police. Gallo's determination bore results. On June 17, 2001, authorities arrested 28-year-old Francisco Zamora Arellano in a sting operation based on Gallo's lead. The next day, Arellano confessed to the murder, admitting his role in the brutal killing. In court, he and his accomplices each received 40 years in prison, a hard-won outcome driven by Gallo's relentless pursuit. At Paula's funeral, Gallo's words rang out, "I will always love you, my adored child. Thank you for your smile and your caresses. Thank you for your songs and your happiness and your love of life. Thank you, beautiful daughter. You always lighted the path so I could distinguish between justice and vengeance." This case lays bare the fierce resolve of a father seeking justice for his child, and the legal system's response when a parent steps in where it falters, becoming an inspiration for all of us. Marianne Bachmeier. In 1981, Germany witnessed a dramatic act of vigilante justice that would resonate for decades. Marianne Bachmeier, a grieving mother, took the law into her own hands during the trial of Klaus Grabowski, the man accused of raping and murdering her 7-year-old daughter, Anna. Anna Bachmeier's life was tragically cut short on May 5, 1980. After a disagreement with her mother, Anna decided to skip school and visit Grabowski, a 35-year-old butcher she had befriended due to his cats. Unbeknownst to Anna, Grabowski had a dark past, He was a convicted sex offender with prior offenses against young girls. On that fateful day, he abducted Anna, held her captive for several hours, sexually assaulted her, and ultimately strangled her with a pair of his fiancée's tights. He then concealed her body in a box and left it by a canal. His fiancée later reported him to the police, leading to his arrest. The trial commenced in 1981, drawing significant media attention. On the third day, Marianne Bachmeier smuggled a small-caliber pistol into the courtroom. Overwhelmed by grief and anger, she stood up during the proceedings and shot Grabowski in the back, killing him instantly. This bold act was witnessed by all present and sent shockwaves throughout Germany. Bachmeier was immediately arrested and later charged with manslaughter. During her trial, public opinion was divided. Many sympathized with her profound loss and emotional turmoil, viewing her actions as those of a heartbroken mother seeking justice. Others, however, cautioned against taking the law into one's own hands, emphasizing the importance of the judicial system. In 1983, Bachmeier was sentenced to 6 years in prison, but was released after serving 3. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and ring that notification bell to be notified of any latest uploads. That said, see you in the next one.